the strategic level, the Russians are definitely using the gas weapon, inverted commas, as a way to break NATO and Western solidarity and put pressure on, again, other countries also to part company with a sort of relatively consolidated approach to trying to force Russia off its naked aggression.
Time to invite you into our daily briefing room, where one of our leading tactical and strategic minds with years of experience as a general officer at the highest level of military command shares their insights into the current state of the war in Ukraine. And joining us now is Sir Simon Mayall, former British Army General and Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff. Good evening to you, Sir Simon.
Hi, Carole. Good evening.
Really good to have you with us. Let me ask you, first of all, about Russia's use of gas as a weapon, apparently. We are seeing gas prices soaring because Russia has further cut gas supplies to Germany and some other Central European countries. The Europeans have been trying to get their act together to try to reduce demand. But do you think Russia is using gas as a weapon of war?
Yes, it is. I would have said, Carole, I was half expecting you were going to be talking about the Russians using gas as a tactical weapon, which there were reports of course, in Mariupol. But at the strategic level, the Russians are definitely using the gas weapon, inverted commas, as a way to break NATO and Western solidarity and put pressure on, again, other countries also to part company with a sort of relatively consolidated approach to trying to force Russia off its naked aggression.
And it's very difficult to know how the West can respond to that. We've already got sanctions on Russia. We're supplying the Ukrainians. But I mean, if the Russians choose to cut supplies through their gas pipeline, beyond diplomatic pressure, there's not a huge amount you can do about it, is there?
Well, the European Union, Carole, as you know, have come up with an idea that they will cut gas consumption by 15% by the end of the year. That will have direct impact on voters, citizens, and people who are observing the consequences of both the Russian actions and, of course, Western sanctions against Russia as a result of those actions. And you can imagine that certain people will begin to question whether we wish to be engaged or wish to be supporting the Ukrainians, given that there are also going to be issues to do with grain supplies. So tackling energy, which we require for every aspect of our life, fundamentally, is a very clever, very a powerful weapon for the Russians to be using in retaliation, because they're not going to confront us militarily at the moment.
You mentioned grain exports. Of course, we saw that very high-profile deal, which was supposed to unblock Ukraine's grain exports, which have been blockaded in its southern ports, millions of tons of Ukraine. I'm seeing reports that Ukraine is saying that workers started at 3 ports to form green corridors to actually allow these shipments to begin. Is that realistic? I mean, we saw that attack on Odessa by the Russians. Do you think this deal is going to work?
I think it's going to be very, very fractious. I've seen in Syria the use by both the Syrians and their Russian backers of these supposed ceasefires, the safe corridors, getting people out in those cases, grain in this case, and then the Russians coming back and breaking those ceasefires, sending people back and really using it as a sort of moral weapon to demoralize either combatants or civilians. It's quite a big technical issue, clearing the mines, both Ukrainian and Russian mines around these ports. And then, of course, the technicality of loading them onto some sort of flag neutral shipping. And then, of course, where the Russians allow the grain to go. And one assumes the grain will go to people who they wish to get on their own side politically. So it's a very complex, very, very technically, very Yeah, very, very complicated, complex issue and problem.
Yeah, we're hearing that they're trying to form green corridors to allow these exports to go ahead. But as you say, you've got to demine the area. And I mean, what sort of protection will there be for ships that do try to set sail? I mean, what is to stop the Russians or forces sympathetic to the Russians just sabotaging the exports resuming?
Well, that is always the problem. You raise people's expectations, you give them hope, then a ship sets sail, then it's hit by someone. The Russians, deny all culpability or responsibility, and then you really are in the issue. Is it the UN? People told me that the Turks were going to go in as a sort of neutral power, but they're members of NATO. Do you get insurance? Which shipping lines are prepared to put their crews and their ships in harm's way if you can't guarantee that these ceasefires will genuinely hold? And for ships companies, these are really really important issues to be addressed, and looking for those security guarantees.
And if we look at the ground war, Ukrainian forces have hit a bridge in the city of Kherson, which is controlled by the Russians. There has been a lot of talk of Ukraine's efforts to launch a counterattack to actually regain territory which is under Russian control. I mean, what's your assessment of how that's going and whether the Ukrainians really will be able to actually push back the Russian invaders?
I think at the moment, Carole, there's a fair stalemate over in the Donbass region, Mariupol, which was the center of a lot of fighting. But over in the west, the Ukrainians have held on to Odessa, held on to Mykolaiv, which was a big port between Kherson and Odessa, a port and a big city between Kherson and Odessa. And what they're trying to do is cut off the Russian forces on the west bank of the Dnieper in Kherson and retake that, thereby effectively blocking any further move by the Russians towards Odessa or Moldova. And the Ukrainians are very keen to show their backers that they can't simply fight defensively well, but they can actually begin to turn back the Russian aggression. And a success in Kherson, certainly on the west bank of Kherson, because Kherson straddles the Dnieper, would be a great morale booster and would give great heart, I think, to those who are contributing to Ukraine's resistance, as well as, of course, being an upside to some of the issues you mentioned earlier on, Carole, about the use of Russia used by Russia of the gas weapon.
And as we know, the supply of arms, ammunition, anti-missile equipment and so on from the West, from the UK, the US and others is absolutely crucial to the Ukrainian war effort. It's something that's going to have to be maintained clearly for quite some time if the Ukrainians are going to make the sort of achievements which the British government would like to see. Do you think that we are going to have to see an increase in the defence budget? Liz Truss has been talking about increasing it up to 3%. Is that something that we're going to have to think about if we're going to have to add that commitment to Ukraine to the other demands on our armed forces?
Yes, I mean, we've been very forward-leaning, as you know, Carole, in stripping out our own inventory, taking risk against our own inventory of stocks and weaponry. The Americans certainly have, but there's a limit to that if you're not going to start reopening production lines of ammunition. And we have already looked at our own larder, and it's rather barer than we might have hoped, because we had a rather higher expectations of not seeing a major war on the European continent. We're going around the world trying to buy up equipment that the Ukrainians have used. A lot of it's ex-Soviet, in order to feed that in. The Ukrainians only got what they've got at the moment, and they're going to have to be trained on new equipments that are coming in from NATO allies, Britain, US among them. So this again is quite a difficult problem. How much risk do you take against your own military capability by feeding the Ukrainian military capability? But it has to be done. And we need to keep the Ukrainians in the fight on this one.
Sir Simon Mayall, thanks so much for joining us in the briefing room this afternoon.